I am 85 years old today, this morning, out of a habit that has been etched into my soul for over 6 decades. I made 2 cups of tea. I placed one on the familiar wooden table, and then instinctively, I turned to set the second cup on the opposite side, but my arm froze in midair. I stood there in the cold silence of the kitchen, watching the steam rise, and the truth hit me like a physical blow. I no longer have anyone to hand that second cup to. The chair across from me is now just an echoing void. Please, do not scroll past this video. What I am about to share isn't a fairy tale romance from the movies. These are the painful confessions of a man who spent his entire life trying to win every argument, only to realize that I've lost everything to the person who mattered most. I don't want you to stand in a silent kitchen at my age, brewing a cup of tea for a ghost. Sit with me for a moment on this porch, before your time runs out too. The first mistake I carry like a heavy stone. I took my wife's presence for granted. When you are with someone for long enough, you start to view them as part of the house's architecture, like a wall or a roof. You assume they will always be there to clean, to listen, and to wait. I remember the years when my career was at its peak. I would come home late almost every night. My wife would be sitting there at the table, having kept a warm dinner waiting for me for 3 or 4 hours. Instead of sitting down and asking how her day was, I would pick up my bowl and complain. I remember one specific night where I shouted because the soup was lukewarm. I didn't see her tired eyes or the way her hands were slightly red from cleaning the house all day. I didn't care that she had waited until her own stomach was cramping just so we could eat together. I viewed her devoted service as her duty, a standard I felt entitled to, rather than a gift of love. I chose to see a cold soup instead of a warm heart. Now, standing in this cold kitchen, I would give anything to eat a burnt, bitter meal just to see her silhouette standing by the stove one more time. And oh, how I wish I hadn't tried so hard to win every single argument. We wasted thousands of hours of our lives fighting over things that were utterly meaningless. I remember one winter evening years ago, we had a heated argument because she forgot to buy the specific brand of coffee I liked. I used all the sharp professional logic I had to prove she was incompetent and careless. I stood there in the living room, towering over her, using my words like weapons to dismantle her dignity. I remember the look of defeat on her face when she finally stopped defending herself and just whispered, "I'm sorry." I felt a surge of triumph in that moment I had won. But that victory cost us 3 days of silence. 3 days where we lived like strangers under the same roof. 3 days of love that we can never get back. Marriage is not a courtroom where you need to find a guilty party. I was a winner in the argument, but I was a loser in love. Never win an argument, only to lose a happy evening with your wife. There is another regret that cuts into my heart every day. I was far too stingy with my praise for her. I remember a time when my wife spent the entire afternoon getting her hair done and dressing up for a company gala I was attending. She had saved up for weeks to buy a dress she thought I would like. She stood nervously in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair, clearly seeking a shred of validation. She asked, "Do I look okay for your partners?" I, preoccupied with the speech I had to deliver, barely glanced up from my notes and said, "It's fine. Let's just go so we aren't the last ones there." I saw the light in her eyes vanish instantly, replaced by a quiet shame. I didn't realize that for a wife, her husband's compliment is the only mirror that truly matters. I was too selfish to spare a simple 10-second hug and a "you look beautiful." And now, when she isn't here to hear it, I want to scream those words to the empty walls every single day. I also regret letting empty social obligations steal the time that belonged to her. I canceled so many dinner dates, so many anniversaries, just to go out drinking with colleagues I thought were my ride or die brothers. I told myself I was building a network or securing our future. I thought I could always see my wife tomorrow, but I had to impress my boss tonight. I remember one anniversary where I left her at a restaurant alone because a crisis at work came up, which turned out to be just a long happy hour with the team. When I retired and my title was gone, those brothers stopped calling within a week. They didn't care about Arthur. They cared about what Arthur could do for them. The only person who stayed, who held my hand through my prostate surgery, who listened to my fears when the world ignored me, was the wife I had consistently put in second place. We often treat strangers with our best behavior to earn temporary respect, but we save our worst moods for our soulmate, the only person who will actually stay until the end of the road. The next mistake was that I never learned to forgive her small errors, even though I expected her to forgive my massive ones. My wife would occasionally forget to lock the back door or accidentally break a piece of my valuable memorabilia. I would treat it like a catastrophe. I would spend hours lecturing her on responsibility and attention to detail. I made her feel like she had to walk on eggshells in her own home. Now, looking at this empty house, I realize those valuable items are just dust and plastic. They mean nothing compared to the sound of her laughter, which I silenced with my constant criticism. If I could go back, I would break every dish in this kitchen myself, just to see her smile and tell her, "It's okay, my love. As long as you are safe, nothing else matters." Don't let material things or minor mistakes fracture the bond between two souls. And I deeply regret the times I didn't listen to her fears because I thought I was too strong to hear them. There were nights she wanted to talk about her anxieties, about the kids growing up, about getting older, about her own health. I would dismiss her, telling her she was being dramatic or that she should just stay positive. I shut down her vulnerability because it made me uncomfortable. I didn't realize that all she wanted was for me to hold her hand and say, "I hear you, and we will face this together." I left her to carry her burdens alone while we sat on the same sofa. By the time I realized I should have listened, her voice had grown quiet and her heart had learned to hide from me. Finally, I realized that true love is the absolute sacrifice of the ego. I spent years being an alpha male, wanting every decision from the color of the curtains to the school the children attended to be mine. I thought my leadership was strength. In reality, it was just a fragile ego that needed to be in control. My wife yielded, not because she didn't have an opinion, but because she valued our peace more than her own voice. She loved me more than she loved her own ego. The true wealth of an old man doesn't lie in his bank balance or the size of his house. It lies in having a wife who still wants to sit beside him on a porch and hold his wrinkled hand after 60 years of seeing his worst flaws. If you are hearing this and your wife is in the other room, do me a favor. Don't wait for this video to end. Don't wait until tomorrow. Go in there right now, put your arms around her, and tell her you are grateful she chose you. Tell her she is beautiful. Tell her you are sorry for the times you were cold. Don't let the words of love get stuck in your throat until all that's left is the silence of an empty kitchen and a second cup of tea that no one will ever drink. I am 85 years old, and I would trade every promotion, every car, and every cent I ever earned just to have one more afternoon sitting across from my wife in that empty chair, even if it was just to hear her complain about the weather or the soup being too hot. Your time is still ticking. Use it to love her, not to win against her. Thank you for sitting with an old man for this long. Telling these stories is how I try to make amends for the man I used to be. If this reached you, Please share it with a husband who might be headed down the same path of regret. Send it to your wife as a quiet, I love you. Subscribe to join us as we explore what it truly means to live a life with no what ifs. And please leave a comment. What is a mistake you've made with your spouse that you want to fix today? Or what is one thing she does that you've started to take for granted? I will sit here and read your stories. It makes this house feel a little less lonely. I wish you the strength to be humble and the wisdom to love deeper than ever before.